Today I'm going to be using 3D via Composer to create some documentation for this miter saw assembly. We'll start by creating a high-resolution output of the overall assembly, focusing on some of the components in this gearbox. We will also create an exploded view using the technical illustration module in order to highlight the gearbox components on the inside. To finish up the demonstration, I'll be going through some of the interactive animation capabilities and the abilities that we have to input some of the 3D via Composer deliverables into outside documents such as a Microsoft PowerPoint presentation. My initial piece of documentation will be an overview image of the entire miter saw assembly with focus on the gearbox assembly, as we see here. To do this, I'll start by positioning the object in roughly the correct orientation I want for my image. 3D Via will take a screenshot or a snapshot of the orientation of the object in 3D at whatever position it was when I saved the output image. I do have the ability to select these two parts and change the opacity. Again, I want to see the internal components, but allow the user to see that there are other components that exist on top of that. I will now bring up the digger, which is a tool that can be used as a magnifying glass, as we see here. I can also bring up an onion skin mode, which allows us to move a little bit deeper into this assembly and in real time peel away different objects. Again, I mentioned that I want to focus on the gearbox assembly, so I'll move back to my zoom mode and then change the center of interest to the gearbox itself. Again, I can continually reposition and tweak the image to get exactly what I'm looking for. I also have the ability to remove things like the grid. I can change the render style to silhouette, so now we can focus mainly on the gearbox itself, but yet also show the entire miter assembly. Now I'm going to save the view. Now this allows me to move back and forth between different positions and orientations of the miter saw assembly. So if I spend some work to change everything to this orientation in this style, I can go back at any point in time to the other style. To finish this up, I need to output this as a high-resolution document. Now I have the ability to save it out as a variety of raster files, JPEG, PNG, TIFF, bitmap files, and the ability to change pixels, DPI, and the overall size. I've now saved this document out, and after we've saved out the high-resolution image, we can take a look at it here to see the quality that we've received from this JPEG output. I'm now going to create a technical illustration of the gearbox assembly itself. I'll start by selecting the gearbox assembly, showing the selection only, which in turn will hide all the other components and bring me directly into my gearbox. Now, I do have the ability in Composer to move around individual objects via the translation or rotation in order to position them the way I want for my output documentation. Now I also have the ability to explode all of these objects in one single command. The linear explode mode will pull all these out equally and space them. After I've exploded these components, I want to position them in the orientation that I would like my view to be created in. I'm going to select all of these components in order to give them some callouts. After I've created some callouts, I want to output my image as a technical illustration, and I'm also going to choose to include the bill of materials table. I'll preview the output first, and as you can see from our preview window, that our output is fully interactive. And now I'll save this outside of 3D via Composer. The SVG file that I saved this out as can be opened up directly within Internet Explorer, and we still have all the interactive capabilities that we did in the preview window. We're now looking at an interactive service procedure that I've created for the miter saw in order to explain to somebody how they would change the blade for this saw. We can see as we start the animation, the flashing screw is asking for some input from the user. We've done this in order to allow somebody that would be following along with this procedure in the real world to complete a certain amount of steps, have the animation stop, allow them to catch up in turn, and then interact again when they get to that correct point. I would like to point out the geometry that we have here for this this bracket. Now, this bracket was put into the assembly before the design was completed. We'll say that now at this point that engineers have realized that we are able to lighten this component and still achieve the same results. Composer gives me the ability to update my geometry after we've created everything as far as animations, as far as views, and not have to redo any of my work. If we start my animation once again, we in turn don't have to change any of the settings, any of the motions, the animations, the property changes. All of that has been updated and kept intact via 3D via Composer. We can use the free 3D Via player in order to distribute the documents and information we've created in 3D Via in a wide variety of manners. Here we're looking at a PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to embed the player in order to simulate a miter saw design review. Now when I start the presentation, we can see that the player will load up directly inside of the PowerPoint presentation, give me access to my views, allow me to interact with the document, and also bring up things like the digger, while also giving us the capability to view the animations that we have previously created, and also still maintain their interactivity.